Pickleball Diaries presents Cling on the Court with your host, Lily Brown. Let's go!
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cling on the Court with our Coach Jeff. And let's continue to cracking the code of the winning mentality. So just recap what you mentioned before about the winning mentality. So we mentioned that so let me see if I recap it correctly. So each of us have our very unique flow state. It's our winning state. And first, we need to discover what our flow state is and how to get into our flow state. Then we need to set up our routine to practice to get into our flow state. And each of us is very different. Then, then we need to put that into real practice as our drilling to practice into how to get into the flow state. Then the next step is we need to communicate with whoever our partner is to let them know this is our way to get into the flow state, and we need to know our partners what their flow state is. We need to be encouraging and help each other to get into our best performance into the tournament. Is that kind of the right recap, Jeff?
Yeah, so yeah, we sort of almost redefined having a winning mentality or a winning attitude into having a focus that's oriented towards performing. So how do we get into our optimal performance state? Because we talked about winning is just an outcome goal. We can't determine if we win or lose. We can just influence it to some degree. So we need to focus on things that we can control. So process objectives. And when we do that, we're more likely to get into our flow state, which again, there's different words. There's flow state, the zone, ideal performance state. But with the idea that if we focus on the process, we're more likely to get into that state. And then when we do that, the chances of winning matches goes up. It doesn't guarantee it, of course, but it maybe it increases the likelihood that we can get a victory. And then, yeah, there's like having rituals and routines for most players, that's going to help them get into the flow state. So for most of us, how we get into a flow state or into our ideal performance state, it's highly individualized, and players need to give that some thought and be reflective about what they think works for them. And then they need to try and repeat those routines and rituals in practice and at tournaments to help themselves get into that flow state where they can perform optimally. And if they do that, if you can walk off the court, win or lose, if you performed at your best, you did your job, right? It never guarantees a win because you've got players on the other side of the net who can influence the outcome of a match. But if you do your job and perform at your best, that's all you can do. So identifying ways to help you do that is the key. And then one of the things that we talked about at the end of the last episode was when you're playing with a single partner or you're playing in a team event with multiple partners, is how do we help each other perform at our best? And one thing is by understanding each other, right? So there's a bunch of things that go into that. But if we understand how each of us wants to be communicated to, how we want to be treated, how we like to receive feedback, all those things, if we have a better understanding of that, we can likely find compromises between how we are and how our partners are to sort of blend together as seamlessly as possible so that we can perform really well. And it's no different than any interpersonal relationship in our lives, right? If you think about like if you have a significant other, for that relationship to be healthy and work, it's usually about some sort of compromise to a degree, right? And having a good understanding of how your partner wants to be communicated to, how they want to be treated. And if we do that, we can have a successful partnership. And so one thing that stood out to me when one of my coaching certification courses that I took part in early in my tennis coaching journey, I had a mentor, and he was a mentor to many top Canadian coaches who went on to become top coaches. His name was Louis Caillet, and he was sort of a pioneer with coaching methodology, and he's pretty renowned sort of internationally. Anyways, but one of the things he said that always stood out to me there's this saying that most of us know, and it's do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And what that means is treat people the way that you would like to be treated. Okay, and it sounds great in theory, but it's actually not true. That's actually, I don't want to say it's wrong, but it might not be optimal. It's not about, you shouldn't treat necessarily how you want to be treated, because how you want to be treated might be very different from how someone else wants to be treated. So the saying should almost be more treat people how they want to be treated, right? So it's
Yep.
not about how you like to be treated, it's about how they want to be treated. So when we put that in a team context or a partnership context, it's like if we know how someone likes to compete. So for instance, if I have a partner that doesn't like a lot of talking, so just in general, they are in their own zone and they prefer not to have too much communication. If I know that, I can dial back my communication frequency. Like I do like to talk a lot because it makes me feel connected to my partner. I like to talk, whether it's like hyping each other up or like quick strategy tidbits almost every point. I like that. But some players don't. So if I understand that about my partner, I can dial that back a little bit. And then hopefully my partner also knows that I do like to communicate a lot. So they may have to open themselves up to receiving some communication or communicating a little bit more, but it's always a give and take.
Yeah.
But we know these things about each other. We can blend the best of our both worlds and hopefully combine to make a great partnership where we optimize or maximize the likelihood that we'll each perform at our best individually, which then generally means we're going to perform at our best as a team.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a very good point, which is often we will say, okay, I gel with this partner, or I don't gel with this partner. It's more about like if you guys can find like a common ground to
Mhm.
accommodating each other, and each of you might go out a little bit of your comfort zone, but you know that's for the best result of the team. So
Exactly.
yeah, and then finding so finding the flow state is like it's so interesting. So just reflecting what you said and of focusing on the process, but not the result. It's
Mhm.
almost like we should, at least for me, for my next tournament, I will focus on I need to get into my flow state, not thinking about, okay, I need to win, I need to do like not the result, but more about, okay, each tournament, I need to get into my flow state, regardless the result, because the
Mhm.
result is what comes after. If each tournament I can get into my flow state, it's win already.
Exactly. Like think again, if we talk about top athletes, so it could be in pickleball or tennis, and it's like you'll hear in interviews sometimes like a player could lose a match and they'll be like, you know what? I felt really good out there today. I played really well. And yeah, maybe there's a few things tactically or strategically I could have adjusted, but I did my job. They were just the better player today. So hats off to them, you know? So again, you did your job, you performed at your best, but that person either performed better than you or they just might be a higher level player than you. So even when you play your best and they play sort of average, they may still beat you because that's just the reality of the situation is they possess either more skills or they possess certain skills at a higher level than you do. And that's okay. That's why we practice and try to improve. But focusing on the process and letting go of outcomes like winning or losing usually frees us up to be more present and get into our flow state. Like if you watch someone like who's a great example is someone like Roger Federer, like when he was in his prime in the tennis world, when he was in his flow state, he was unstoppable. And, when we think of flow state, he literally was flowing, like his strokes were so effortless or like flowing and smooth. And you can't be that way if you're tight. And usually we get into that state if we accept winning or losing, or we accept the possibility that we can perform our best and still lose. As soon as we let go of the outcome, that allows us to be more present. And when we're present and just enjoying every moment, that's when we're going to perform our best. And setting little process objectives and having rituals and routines and having practices that simulate gameplay, that's where we're going to learn to get into that flow state or ideal performance state more often. And that's always the goal. And like you said, that like it's highly individualized. So we need to all be reflective and learn about what are the little process objectives that we can focus on, or the rituals and routines that we should have that really help us get into that state. And it's an ongoing challenge, right? There's again, like there's, most of the time, so like 80% of the time we play sort of like medium level in terms of our performance. Like we play okay, like not amazing or exceptional, not terrible. So like 80% of the time or like 60% of the time, that's sort of how it goes.
Yeah.
And then there's this like 10% of the time where we just feel amazing. We felt super present. We were dialed in and we're in that flow state. And it's like we just couldn't feel better and we perform optimally. And then there's another 10% of the time that we perform at our worst, right? And like it doesn't feel good when that happens, but it does happen from time to time for various reasons. So if we can find ways to try and have like our ideal performance state more than that 10%, or to get into that state more often, we're doing a great job. Or if we're having days where we feel like we're in that sort of mediocrity zone, or like we're performing okay but could be better, if we can find ways to tweak our focus, or our ability to refocus mid-match or mid-tournament, that's the other key, is like when we're not quite at our best, like how can we improve in the middle of a game or in the middle of a match or tournament? So anyways, that's the ongoing challenge. But often when we let go of outcomes, it allows us to be super present and enjoy the moment. And when we're enjoying the moment, we usually aren't distracted. So we're very engaged. Our decision making gets better. Our technique gets better because we're more coordinated when we're loose and like confident. So that's the challenge. But, being present and trying to let go of future outcomes or past outcomes is one way of doing that.
Yeah. So, like talking about this, I want to ask you a question. Is
Mm,
using the word don't. So
yeah.
I find especially going to tournament, if I say like to myself, don't miss the serve, I gotta miss the serve.
Yep.
And like if I'm thinking, oh, don't disappoint my partner, then I get super tight. And often, like I know I try to train myself, don't focus on the negative. Like don't, like we all know, like if we say don't, often we just really focus on the negative part. So I want you to shed some light on of how do we encourage ourselves positively. And then also that lead to another question. And when we do practice and drilling, and often we self-correct. And I notice I have that habit in drilling too. And I will, like, if I miss a shot, I will say, okay, don't overrun it. Like, so I don't know, like to what degree these kind of self-correction is good or is like too negative. Like how much we can really use the self-correction, like say, especially in practice, and how much can we say to ourselves, say, don't do this, don't do that.
Well, yeah, this is a really good point, and it's a challenge a lot of players have at all levels. Is like when we say don't do something, like it's good that we're aware that we did something that didn't work. So like we did something wrong. So we hit the ball in the net. Well, we hit it too low, or we hit the ball out. Maybe we hit it too fast, or we hit it too high, whatever. But it's good to have an awareness of what happened, but then the focus should be on what we want to do instead. So, like if we hit the net on a dink because we just hit it too slow or too low, our self-talk and our self-correction should be more height, or a little more speed, a little more speed. Well, because again, we should be focused on the process. Okay. So focusing on what didn't happen is not helpful. But as we know, a lot of people dwell and stay on their sort of upset emotions, or they react negatively to what didn't happen, and their mind stays on what didn't happen, which is a past. So you're now thinking in the past, which takes you away from being present, and it's not a solution. So, your self-talk and your ability to recognize what to do is really important. And then encouraging yourself to focus on that solution, whatever it may be. There's a really cool, like little visual sort of trick that illustrates this is if you close your eyes and tell yourself, don't think of a pink elephant. So you close your eyes, you say, okay, don't think of a pink elephant. Well, what is your mind thinking about? The key word there is pink and elephant.
Yeah.
So if you want to change that, you could say, like I could say, okay, Lily, close your eyes. Don't think of a pink elephant. You're going to have to find something else to think of to
Yeah.
replace that thought, right?
Yeah.
And so it's easy to recognize what we're not doing. What's hard is like making sure we have a solutions-oriented mindset, which is just another way of saying process. Like we're going to focus on a process-oriented solution that helps us stay present and hopefully improve the outcome of a specific shot. But yeah, I see that. I see that sometimes with coaches. You see it with players. They actually verbally out loud, sort of berate themselves and like, come on, don't do that. And that's okay. That can be okay as long as it's not too frequent. But as long as they say, okay, don't do that or stop doing that, as long as they replace it with start doing this, that's okay. Because again, we need to recognize what we did wrong if we want to come up with a solution. But the point being is that we need to find a process-oriented solution to improve the outcome.
Yeah. So by saying that, we do need to train ourselves more, even in the drilling and practice, train ourselves more focus on that's the right thing to do instead of say, don't outrun the ball. Maybe we say to ourselves, okay, I need to keep at the right distance to the ball.
Exactly. That's a perfect example. Like that's a simple example, but that's basically an ongoing process when we're training, drilling, or even competing. And that's how it should be, is like just focus on what you want to do, not dwelling on what didn't happen or what you don't want to do, because that's not a solution. And for again, yeah, that's a perfect example. So positive, we just call that positive self-talk or like solutions oriented self-talk. So even having a mantra, like if you can have the mantra of like, I'm going to be a good problem solver, like that might help you perform better, right? So, no, or having a mantra, again, one of my mentors, the same guy, Louis Caillet in the tennis world, he used to talk about like teach your players to have sort of the self-talk of, whatever happens, I can handle it. So you can tell yourself that as a mantra, I can handle it. And that means everything, distractions from the crowd. If you tell yourself that, you're going to most likely be okay with any potential distractions that could disrupt you. Doesn't mean they won't disrupt you, but it means you'll find a solution to dial yourself back into the present or into the process so that you can improve outcomes, right? So yeah, no, always having a solutions oriented mindset is super important to growing as a player or a
Yeah.
person, right?
Is there any tips you can give to tame the nerves, like on the court? And especially, I mean, during the tournaments, especially
Mhm.
when the score starting and when you're so close, say if we're running 15 points, when it's like 13, 14, it's the nerves start coming up, right? Is there any tips you can give?
Yeah, it's a deep topic, and there could be lots of tips. But again, we need to first identify where do those nerves come from. Usually, it's some sort of outcome-oriented mindset. So you're thinking about the future, or you're dwelling on the past.
Mm-hmm.
And that's bringing about feelings and emotions. And emotions create nervousness, right? So, and usually that's related to fear. So, like fear of how we're going to be perceived by others. Like, oh, what if these people see me lose to this team that's like rated lower than I am, And so we don't want to be perceived in a negative light or whatever. Or what if I lose this match? I'm not going to get a medal. This is the semifinals. If I don't win this match, I can't play for bronze or whatever. So first of all, like to find a solution to your nerves, you first have to recognize that you're nervous. And surprisingly, a lot of players don't have the awareness that they're actually feeling nerves. They're sort of aware, but often they're just not. Okay, then then acknowledging, okay, I'm nervous, like I feel some sort of nervousness or fear or whatever. And then you have to quickly recognize, like, why do I feel this way? Well, maybe it's because I'm dwelling on the past mistake, or my friend has come to watch me play this tournament and that's making me nervous. You're now thinking about something externally that's making you feel certain emotions. So now you need to come up with a solution. And there's different routines and rituals that different players may have. So that could be pre-match routines. So doing like a really good physical warm-up before your match. Usually if we can get our heart rate up before a match starts, we can elevate our heart rate a little bit and then let it settle a little bit. But if we play a match without a physical warm-up, often that physical intensity and the emotions that can come with a match elevate our heart rate, our pulse increases, and before you know it, psychologically, we're sort of racing and we're all over the place. So a really good physical warm-up before a match is a great way to possibly calm your nerves. Having process objectives, so maybe writing out a few simple objectives that give your mind somewhere to go and keep you present. Okay, because again, if nerves come from fear, then we need something that to take us into the present so that we're not thinking about these external things that disrupt us from being present and enjoying being in the moment. So writing down process objectives for every match might be really helpful for some players. Doing post-match summaries or reviews. So like reflecting on what happened in the match and like, oh, okay, I felt like this, or here's a situation where I struggled, and then taking those learning points and then coming up with oriented objectives for the next match. That's a great way to get over nerves. Then there's your practice routines. So when you're practicing and drilling, do you actually do things that have a score? Are you competing in different situations with your drilling partner? If you're just going out there and hitting shots without any consequence to missing or no competition, that doesn't resemble real tournament play, and it's not going to bring about the emotions and feelings that come with tournament play. And if you don't experience those emotions and nerves very often, how can you get good at recognizing that you're experiencing them? And then how can you get good at finding solutions to those nerves? So I hope those are a few tidbits there of how you can hopefully calm nerves. One thing that I focus on is breathing out at contact. So there's nothing that is more present than the moment of contact, right? So when I hit the ball, I focus on breathing out, and that gives me something specifically at the most critical moment, which is the moment of contact, so that nothing else can enter my brain. And it also helps me stay relaxed. So when I exhale, generally speaking, my muscles and body are less tight. So I'm smoother, my coordination is better. And if my coordination is better, generally my technique or execution will be better. Focusing on, okay, I'm going to split step every time my opponent hits the ball. That's also something that's very present. So every time that your opponent hits the ball, if you tell yourself you're going to split step, you're going to be so closely watching the ball hit your opponent's paddle that your reactions will be really quick. Your decision making will improve. Your perception skills will improve. And all of that will keep you in the present. So there's a whole bunch of things, but players need to, first of all, try to be aware when they're experiencing nerves and then try to come up with solutions that work for them. And those solutions could be during matches, could be between matches, or it could be related to your drilling and practice sessions.
Wow, thank you. That's that's a pickleball meditation. I need to work on that.
Well, meditation, so doing meditation or visualization exercises, that's something else you could do, right? Meditation is basically the ability to stay present and
Yeah.
let go of the past, not be in the future and just be. And so if you practice meditation, there will definitely, if you get good at it, or even if you just go through the motions of practicing meditation, it will generally have positive impact on your ability to perform in a sport. Because again, we just talked at length about the ability to stay present and stay in the process to perform our best, and meditation helps with that.
Yeah, Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. I know you have a hard stop you have to go today. And this is like such a great content. I would love to continue to chat more about that. I'm
Mhm.
sure for our listeners, it's a very informative and helpful episode for ourselves. Doesn't matter tournament or not playing tournament, but to practice how we can handle the nerve, how we can help ourselves constantly reaching to our best. And yeah, this is like amazing. Thank you so much. And I will let you go. I know you have to go, but all the listeners there, please feel free to follow us on YouTube and on other podcast platforms. And see you guys very soon. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Lily. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, definitely. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.